terrible mistake. And so many died for that mistake. It was in Vietnam that became a turning point in my life. The violence, the suffering there, losing friends, wounded there. I don't know what else to say other than I was forced into the arms of God. Death was close. I've come to the conclusion, not overnight, but through that experience in Vietnam that has just simply grown over the years, that we are not made for war. We read about the tens of thousands struggling in PTSD, the suicides. We are not made for war. Our God, a loving God, a creator, who has given us life that's sacred and precious, did not make us for war. And many have come to the conclusion in our journey of faith, something very important and very clear. God does not bless war. God does not bless killing. God does not bless violence. God does not bless discrimination in its many forms. It saddens me to see the silence of our spiritual leaders, our church leaders. As a Catholic priest in my travels throughout the country, I'm often asked, why are our church leaders, our spiritual leaders, so silent on this war in Iraq? But we have learned something very important. Peace will not come from the top down. No, it will come from the bottom up. We will be the peacemakers. Not the corporate executives, not the politicians, not the spiritual leaders who have grown silent. No. It is our responsibility. If there will be peace in our world, in our country, it must come from us. Bolivia is very much in the news today. It's a very poor country. Most of the people of Bolivia throughout the developing world live on the edge. They struggle for survival. They're in the shacks without running water, without electricity. Most do not have schools for their children. When their children are sick, there's not a clinic to go to get those needed medicines. After struggling through language school in Cochabamba, Bolivia, and I have to confess, I think I was the worst student to ever go to that school. When I spoke Spanish, they thought I was speaking this indigenous language, Aymara. But I went into La Paz, a slum there, and I began to live with the people, the poor. And they became my teachers. And that's the way it works. If we will only dare to put our feet with them, the poor, the oppressed of our world, the victims of violence, they will teach us so much. Bolivia was living under a brutal dictator, General Banzer, who came into power through a violent coup. And it angered me to see my country there, the United States, giving guns and training to the men with the guns, the bullies, the thugs. They ran the country. And the large corporations back then and today, they're coming into those countries like Bolivia, where there are huge profits to be made from the cheap labor and those vast natural resources. They see us as El Imperio, the empire, the new conquistadors, who are there to enrich ourselves, to live really, to profit from the blood and sweat of the poor. It's not complicated. People who live under such conditions, day in and day out, year in, year out, begin to organize. They say, basta, enough. I must say I was very humbled there as a Catholic priest to be connected to the comunidades de base, the faith communities, the poorest of the poor, coming together in their small groups to read and reflect on the scriptures, where they come to discover this loving God, a creator, who has given to their country and every country more than enough resources for everyone to live comfortably and in peace. And they know that this is not God's divine will, that they should live under these conditions. They know that the reasons are oppression, exploitation. Countries like the United States and others who come to exploit them. Factory workers, tin miners, and their spiritual leaders, priests and others. And I and others were able, from the barrio, from the slum there, along with the Jesuit, a couple of Dominicans, we were able to get a pass to visit the political prisoners and documented many cases of torture. And it was after going to Washington with our findings to bring to congressional leaders. When I returned to Bolivia, I was arrested in my 5th year and forced out of the country. I came home very sad. I did not want to leave the people there in our work. I tried to go back, could not get a visa. My attention turned to El Salvador, a country far worse than the one I came from. Archbishop Oscar Romero had just been assassinated in his country, gone down in his church for his defense of the poor. 4 churchwomen from our country who went there at the invitation of Bishop Romero to work with the poor were raped and killed by the Salvadoran military. 2 of them good friends of the Maryknoll sisters, Maura Clark and Ida Ford. When that happened, it brought many of us to El Salvador. And once again, when we were there, we found our country, the United States, deeply involved, giving guns and training to those doing the killing.